Thank you, Chair, for your kind introduction. Good evening, everyone. I'm Jiun Kim, and I'd like to introduce our recent study on the visitor change after COVID-19 in conservation area. I recorded my presentation due to temporary unstable connection in the field sites, but I hope I could answer your Q&A in the chat. So even with the global alliance and countermeasures to deal with the COVID crisis, the prolonged COVID-19 pandemic is resulting severe impacts on public health and global economy, social activities, also the human nature interactions. These social interventions caused by the COVID-19 are rapidly changing our many aspects of our lifestyle, including social communication, transportation, also the physical and mental health care, travel, and outdoor recreation activities. The perceived value of cultural ecosystem is not in static states, but in dynamic states, temporarily changing depending on the climate and surrounding environments, and also the social conditions. For example, let's imagine a daily change of the park users or the seasonal visitor peak during the spring and fall to enjoy flowering and leaf coloring linked to the temperature changes. In the societal aspect, the current COVID pandemic is deeply affecting how we interact with the nature environment, and this can result associated changes in perceived value of the ecosystem services. For example, as you can see in the different scenarios in this figure, the perceived value of the ecosystem services can be vulnerable or resilient with some recovery or resistance, or some ecosystem services may be even facilitated by the perturbation event. Thus, the timely understanding of the COVID-induced changes is an important step to maintain the virtuous circle between the conservation area and local urban communities. The visitor characteristics has been the universal indicator to understand perceived cultural ecosystem services and its estimated economic values. So diverse monitoring method of the visitor number, including the on-site survey, the ticket counts at the entrance, and infrared and physical count on the trails has been broadly used to identify the visitor characteristics. However, the increased contagious risk of the close contact with the visitors and reduce the human resources available during the COVID pandemic make the use of this conventional counting method become less applicable, especially in the national scale. So in this respect, the visitor estimation method using information communication technologies are expanding to trace the visitor patterns in the national scales. The human mobility derived the mobile network data has several methodological benefits, understanding the visitor patterns during the pandemic situation. The mobile network data can reflect human mobility pattern in a broad range of the spatial coverage from local to national scales. And it also has a higher temporal and then seasonal frequency of the visitor count using the constant survey method in the target area. And lastly, a massive integration with the personal attributes information like age, genders, and their home ranges can provide more insight of the observed visitor pattern in the study design. Here, using the mobile network data, we studied the spatial temporal pattern of the visitor characteristics as a measurable indicator of aesthetic and recreational value in conservation area. Specifically, our study tried to address the following questions. The first is, what is the temporal pattern of visitor characteristics in conservation area during the COVID-19 pandemic? And then second is which social and surrounding environment factors strongly affect the level of the visitor change during the COVID-19 pandemic. In Japan, which is our study area, Currently, there are 52 Ramsar sites and 34 national parks, and we focused on the 98 visitor centers running in or near the conservation sites. We only included those opened and established before 2019 to compare the COVID impact with the pre-COVID year. The mobile network big data was used to estimate the number of visitors and their travel characteristics to the visitor centers. To identify the people who actually visited the visitor centers, we made a 200 buffer around the visitor center, and we counted the number of the people. And those who stayed more than 15 minutes in this area were considered as visitors in this study. And this criteria were to exclude groups, people simply passing by near roadways. And we also integrated the personal attribute information like gender, age classes, the visit date, and their residential addresses. From these informations, the travel distance was calculated by measuring the distance between their home range to the visited conservation site. And this figure shows the change of the COVID positive cases from 2018 to 2020. And the red point is accumulated number of the COVID-19 cases. And blue point is the detect rate of the positive case. And the black line shows the seasonal temperature changes. In Japan, the first case was officially reported in January 2020, and then the first peak wave came in April, and then the second in August, and third in the January 2021. Based on these reported cases, we grouped our visitor data into two periods, the 2019 as a pre-COVID year, and then 2020 as a post-COVID period. And this annual comparison makes us possible to compare the COVID impact without considering the seasonal effect. So before seeing the COVID impact result, the general visitor characteristics before COVID-19 was analyzed, which only used the data before COVID. And this generally matched with everyone's common understanding on the travel characteristics. The red color indicates the positive relationship between in the metrics, and the blue means the negative relationship between the variables. So with more details, the number of the living population was higher in urban center and lower to the remote area. And the total number of the visitors was positively related to the size of the conservation area, and the larger conservation area attracted more people traveling from the remote distances. And this figure shows the temporal trends of the relative visitor and then travel distance to the conservation area. So during the normal year on the left, before COVID-19, the number of the visitors shows the unimodal shape changes, which is increased from the spring to summer and decreased from fall to winter. And the travel distance also showed a similar pattern. But during the COVID pandemic period, we can see a large drop of the visitor number at the first peak of the COVID positive cases. At this point, the travel distance also decreased to the 10% of the mean level of the previous year. However, after the first peak, we observed a gradual recovery of the number of visitors and then travel distance, even with more confirmed COVID cases. And the number of the visitors peaked in October during the pandemic. So there was the overall change pattern in the conservation site, but as we know, the spatial scale of the conservation areas was very broad. So we further checked the COVID impact on different size group of the conservation area. the relative visitors in conservation area after the COVID pandemic was decreased by 2000, not 2000, the 27% compared to the pre-COVID period. But the relative visitor loss was larger in the large conservation sites, and the visitor loss in the smaller conservation site was less than the half of the large conservation sites. The overall travel distance was also decreased by 26% compared to the pre-COVID year. And similar to the magnitude of visitor numbers, the large conservation site had more decrease, and the mean travel distance of the small conservation areas showed a more resilient pattern and with a quicker recovery after large drop and the first wave period. So spatially, this spatial mapping shows a lot of evidence of which site attribute and surrounding environment condition resulted the difference in the visitor change patterns. And in this map, the blue color indicates decrease and the red color is increase. We found the conservation areas located in the peri-urban area maintained their visitor numbers even during the COVID-19 pandemic, and those was the mostly Ramsar site close to the semi-urban area. And you can see the red point highlighted by red arrows are largely distributed in the peri-urban area. And the same mapping with the travel distance to the conservation area shows the remote conservation sites. Like, for example, Hokkaido shows a higher level of the decrease during the COVID period, which means the long distance travel from large cities to remote conservation site was highly decreased. And by using generalized additive modeling, we compared the response of the visitor characteristics to environmental factors. As you can see on the right figure, we found very interesting shifting pattern of the visitor numbers from the urbanized area to the less urbanized site. As a result, the visitor number and the travel distance at the peri-urban area was largely increased, and this shift pattern were matched with the results shown in the spatial mapping. Next, related to the level of the visitor number and mean travel distance, the populated conservation sites tend to decrease largely during the COVID pandemic, and people tend to visit more proximate conservation site, having a short travel distance. And we can see travel distance was only increased at the shorter travel range. And in summary, even during the COVID pandemic, people wanted to enjoy the aesthetic and recreational benefits from the conservation sites. However, due to the increased infection risk in the population area, even among the conservation sites, so people visited less populated conservation sites designated in the peri-urban landscape and within the short travel distance from their home range. So this was our overview of visitor characteristics in conservation area in Japan. So although there has been limited monitoring result published in Asian region, I would like to compare our findings with the global studies using conservation culturenomics output. The conservation culturenomics is new developing field to try to evaluate the human nature relationships using the digital contents. So when we close look into the trace in the digital space, we might find some meaningful pattern in the real world. For example, the previous studies showed that the amount of the web search for the wildlife species was positively correlated to the wildlife surveys in the citizen science program. And so by using this technology, this year, one global culturenomics research team published the change of the public interest in the global national park using Google Trend dataset. So the left panel shows the search volume by global community, and the right panel shows those by the local communities. We can see the very similar pattern with our visitor change result. The search volume had the sudden drop in the early COVID period, but showed a rapid recovery afterward. And the level of the recovery was much larger in the local community than the global community, which lives in the remote area from the conservation sites. And this study also identified that the relative change of the public interest in natural park, including some Ramsar sites, and there was some hotspots like Central America, Australia, and also East Asian region may had a large impact of the COVID on the public interest in conservation areas, which was closely related to the actual visitors in the site. And another global study is on the relative visit in park using the Google Mobility report showed that even in the East Asian region, the relative change of visitors in conservation sites may vary, possibly depending on the severity of the COVID spread and social interventions made during the pandemic. So the result observed a very large bias in depending on the countries. So this result implies a more collaborated research is needed to make a global network for sustainable ecosystem services and benefits in East Asian region. So lastly, in summary, we found the COVID pandemic resulted a sudden decrease of visitor numbers and travel distance just after the first peak of the wave of COVID-19, but there was a gradual recovery in the following season. This means the increase, even during the pandemic period, there was the increased public needs for recreational and aesthetic ecosystem services. And the second, the visitor changes of the smaller the conservation sites were more resilient to pandemic events. So this may indicate the scale diversity of the conservation area to adapt different social and environmental changes, which will be increased in the future. And we found higher preference of conservation sites in peri-urban landscape. So because they have the lower population density in the previous year, that may be related to the lower transmission risk. And they also have the minimum tourism infra, so people can enjoy the site. Lastly, we showed that the mobile network data has a broad application potential in the conservation science to understand the visitor characteristics in Ramsar site and national park. So that is end of my presentation, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. This was a wonderful paper. The findings Mr. Ji-Yoon Kim shared based on his findings from empirical studies. And this paper was written by Jin-Yoon Kim and Jun Nishihiro and Takahiro Kobu. And in fact, the title was Revealing COVID-19 Induced Changes of Visitor Patterns in Conservation Area Using Mobile Network. Thank you very much. It was a very good presentation. I thank you very much. Now I would like to ask the people, please ask your question in chat box. Mr. Kim, would you please throw your eyes to the chat box if there are any questions? I would like to ask you to give them answer in a quick manner. I don't see here any. Please, I ask you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. How do there is a question, how do you make the survey?
How can you repeat the question again?
how do you make the survey? This is from Pei Liun Lu.
How do I?
How do you make the survey? I think just methodology.
Yes. So basically, the mobile companies in each country already had the database. So we just utilize those database by setting the interesting area. For example, it was the visitor center in the conservation area. So I think in the most of the country, when you contact to the mobile database company's database, you can do the very similar analysis.
Okay. I don't see any other question here at this time, and the time is almost over. Thank you very much, Ji-Yoon-san. It was a good presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to go from Japan, I would like to take you to India.
Welcome from India. My title, myself, Rajashri Naik, presenting on the title, as the sir said, Assessment of India's largest inland saline lake, integrating Google Earth engine platform.
Would you please a little bit increase your volume? Yes, please.
Okay. Yes, is it fine now?
Oh, okay, much better.
Okay, thank you, sir. So, integrating the Google Earth engine platform with a public response in the time frame of COVID-19 pandemic, and currently working as a PhD scholar under Dr. Lakshmikant Sharma from Department of Environmental Science, School of Earth Science, Central University of Rajasthan. So generally, it is a common notion that arid and semi-arid regions are devoid of waters. But interestingly, these areas, geographical areas, have saline lakes, which make up 44% of the volume and 23% of the area of all the lakes. But it is very depressing that these saline lakes receive little consideration due to the saline nature as compared to their freshwater counterparts. So these lakes are currently subject to water flow diversions, construction of hydrological structures, pollution, mining, biological disruptions, and exotic species invasions. As a result of which, these are experiencing hydropattern changes, water budget, hydrological communication, habitat alteration, loss of productivity, and connectivity. So, during this COVID-19 framework time frame in the sense, my paper considers 2019, 20, and 21 up to February. So the question was that what is the change in the Sambar Lake at the landscape level, and what are the responses of the public towards this lake, and what is their ideas? So to consider this, we had three objectives: to evaluate at the landscape level, to estimate the soil salinity and surface algal bloom of the lake as a representative of ecological parameters, and to interrelate this result with the public response to represent the economic sector. So the current study area, it is located in the Rajasthan state of India at the confluence of three districts, Ajmer, Jaipur, and Nagaur. It is a Ramsar site declared as 23rd March 1990 under criteria A with site number 464. Sambar Lake is an endorheic basin supported by 4 ephemeral streams like Mendha, Rupangarh, Khandel, and Kharian, forming a catchment of 5,520 kilometers square. So I use the data and softwares. I use satellite data, Landsat satellite data for the April month 2019, representing the pre-COVID-19 lockdown, April 2020 satellite image as representative of COVID-19 lockdown, and February 2021 as post-COVID-19 lockdown. Ground data use questionnaire form for the district collectors, for officials of Hindustan Salt Limited, which is under whom the Salt Lake Salt Extraction Company is, and to the general public. I used the softwares ArcGIS and MS Office. I used online question form Google Form and a cloud computing platform Google Earth Engine. Google Earth Engine is a free cloud computing domain where all the satellite data of Landsat and Sentinel are available. This Google Earth Engine platform helps to reduce the time for pre-processing data, bulky softwares, and also reduces the efforts. So I use this platform due to pandemic situation. I could not visit the lake, so I use the remote sensing technology using this cloud computing platform. So the comprehensive methodology consists of two parts. First part is satellite data based and another is ground data. So in satellite data, Google Earth Engine, I use the data catalog. 1 minute, let me use the pointer. So is the pointer visible?
Yes, yes, please, yes. Very
Okay.
good.
Although
small, but can be seen.
Okay, thank you, sir. So I archived the required satellite data from the data catalog of the platform, use the spatial temporal filter, and you computed the soil salinity index using the band blue and red of Landsat satellite and surface algal bloom using the band of near infrared, blue, green, and red, and finally downloaded the maps. And in the second part, in the ground study, first I intended to use the Google platform. So I collected questions from Ramsar and IUCN relevant to the inland saline lakes. Then I chalked out the 30 questions relevant to saline wetlands. Then I sent to the target groups like the district collectors, to the stakeholders and the local people. But it was shocking to receive only a few responses from the public and no response from the other target groups. So to enhance my study, I conducted a phase two part where I used I visited the people in person. I reframed the question, narrowed down my question to only 10, and then I asked the question to the local people of Sambar city, then try to interact with different peoples and their notion. Though it was a pandemic situation, still people cooperated to respond to the question. They were unwilling to hold the question papers, but from a distance they answered my questions. So finally, I integrated these two data set results to assess during the time frame of COVID-19. So these are some field photographs of Sambar Lake during my field visit, where you can see that this is almost a drying part of the lake. And here in the second picture, in one part is having water and other part is not having water, completely dry. And the waters are only present in the salt pan areas. So this is the first, this is the result of satellite data set, algal bloom index and salinity index. In 2019, the white color or the bright color represents the highest value of the algal bloom. These are the algal bloom which is constricted only to the limited part. But if we see the 2020 image, the white color is spread to the almost around to the lake, representing the increase in algae. Again, in 2021, you will see that there is no white or bright portion, indicating the removal of the algal community. For representing the salinity index, soil salinity, the bright part, the dark part represents the soil salinity, which is completely absent in 2019. But during the lockdown phase of March, April, and May in 2020, the lake regained its soil salinity almost in every part of it around the lake. But again, after the lockdown was removed, again the lake lost its soil salinity due to the extraction of the salt. So this is the result of satellite data. Then the ground survey data was the response that 75% of the people were responding that they are not working under any salt production nowadays. They are involved mostly in other secondary and tertiary works. And those who are engaged in salt extraction, their response was that they were working on government land only. 15% were working on both private land as well as government land, and 21% respondents working on both government and private. So when I asked what the amount of salt do I extract from the lake, most of the people answered that the extraction was 20 more than 20,000 tons. However, their response was that they were extracting more amount of salt in the past decades using surface well, but now they are using both surface well as well as bore wells to extract the brine from the groundwaters. So when they were asked about the trend of salt production, 70% people answered that it is decreasing. 70% said this is decreasing, and 17% said that it is increasing. Majority said the trend is decreasing, though they are producing 20,000 tons. And the reason for decreasing is the most important cause is the increasing competition. Other than environmental factors, family issues, and any other reasons, the main cause is the increasing competition. Increasing competition indicating the illegal salt and extractions. So 90% respondents said that they are not receiving any help from the government. Though they are working in the government land, they are working as temporary laborers. They do not have security of jobs. So they have to search for other tertiary, secondary and tertiary jobs. They work as a seasonal laborers. So there is loss of sense of security for these people. So the next question, the other users of the lake. So 61% people do not use lake in any other form, and 27% only use the bird watching and medicine collection, irrigation, and aquaculture. So to ask the public the awareness of its ecological importance. Other questions were for the economic point of view during these situations, when what is the response, whether they are aware of it as it's a Ramsar site or not, since it is declared since 1990. 77% people said that yes, they know it's a Sambar lake, but 22% still public is not aware about its international importance. So the final question to them, that what is the other activities they could ask the government or interested, because they are dissatisfied by the salt industry during COVID lockdown also, as the other tertiary activities were also stopped. So neither they are left with no choices, neither extraction nor illegal extraction, legal extraction, or any other activities. So
Yes.
they are lively. Yes, sir.
Please, yes, now.
Their main choice for the lake was, it is very impressive to see that 45% people are interested for ecotourism. As it is a Ramsar site, it is visited by lakhs of flamingos and other migratory birds. Sambar Lake used to be a hub of 279 migratory birds in the past decades. People are aware of its ecological importance, so they are interested for ecotourism. Then other 28% are interested for solar production, solar panel business, and 18% are interested for adventurous activities like paragliding, bike riding, and rest 8% interested for film shooting, because many of the Bollywood serials and movies are also recorded here because of its aesthetic beauty. So to discuss, so if we see my another past papers, in that paper I had found that using the geospatial data, that the lake was covering 30% in 1972, but with 2019, up to 2019, it has degraded at a constant rate of 4.23%, and currently it is 3.4% only. The lake has shrunk to this rate, and if the same conditions prevails, the illegal salt and encroachment is not checked, further 40% of the available wetland will also shrink by 2059. This is the recent work by the Naik and Sharma 2021. And this is the wetland status, current status. And in 2019, this lake had also encountered avian botulism in 2019 when around 40,000 migratory birds had also died. So integrating the results of past study and current study, we see that soil salinity and algal status have increased during the lockdown period. Irrespective of economic activities, if our focus goes only to the lake restoration, we can see that with simple 3 months check of the activities, the lake had revived as to its water level has increased. Subsequently, algal bloom has increased and salinity has increased, and it had also attracted large number of migratory birds this year. So if the because the Sambar Lake has both 77 kilometers square for salt production and other 113 square kilometer for natural wetland. If this ratio is maintained, if illegal extraction is not entertained, then this could be a very good site for both ecology and economy. Here I want to quote an example of the Lake Evans from Los Angeles. Los Angeles diverted the water from the saline lake, Lake Evans, and as a result, it completely desiccated, and now it is investing $300 billion for 25 years to check dust and salt storms, which is leading to the health, the pulmonary diseases of the people. So we should take lesson from many other saline lakes that we should check this illegal solvent extraction before Sambar Lake completely desiccates and leads to the its complete desiccation. So the primary steps, I think, we should take.
Would you like to summarize it, please?
Yes, sir. Fine. Complete regulation on groundwater, habitat suitability assessment, migratory birds, and management of the lake. So these restoration steps will completely help to restore its major sector: water, haloalkylophiles, soil, and water. So to conclude, I'll say that there are many other saline lakes also which we should focus. And this lake, as it has example of lockdown, has complete revival, partial revival. Same way the other lakes will also revive if we give little focus. So these are other publications. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rajashree Nayak. Rajashree, you made a very good presentation. Rajashree and Lakshmikant Sharma, they were from the Department of Environmental Science, School of Earth Science, Central University of Rajasthan, India. Now you have a, although there is a very short time, you have a questions from Ajit Patnaik from India. The question is how the salt making was impacted during the COVID-19 lockdown period, both by Sambar Lake Limited and private operator. So would you like to answer this question?
Yes, sir, definitely. Sir, actually Sambar Lake is a very good lake, and it has 77 square kilometers for salt production, and rest is supposed to be left for wetland. But with the due course of time in recent last few decades, illegal salt pan encroachment has occurred, and the whole lake is under pressure. So there is no water left in general days. But during lockdown, what happened? The economic activities are stopped. People are supposed to stay at home. So what happened? The illegal water extraction, over extraction of groundwater reduced. Illegal activities were reduced. This helped to retain the water in the lake. So this helped. If water is there, definitely the subsequent halophiles and halophiles would be there, and the whole ecology was tending to restore. Before it is completely restored, again unluck has led to its destruction. So
thank you. There is another question. Why the lake is included in the Montrex record? Can you answer this question?
Because as I said, it is not have the, as my result says, that it is degrading. The lake is shrinking from its official boundary. There is no water. If there is no water, there is no algae, and there is no algae, there is no migratory birds. So there is reduction of wetland, there is reduction of ecological properties, reduction of migratory birds. So complete ecosystem is towards its collapsing. So this is the result.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I have
you,
one
sir.
small question. What is this solar production? You have mentioned in your paper solar production. Just
Yes.
quickly.
So solar production is the government planned for its solar panel. It was supposed to put, as the lake has no water, the dry part was supposed to have the solar productions, solar production. Yes.
There is a one suggestion or demand from one of our parts, Rafiq. Would you like to share your presentation to Mr. Rafiq, please? Okay. Please share your presentation. Can you present it?
So
Can you share it?
Yes,
okay. Thank you very much, Rajashree. It was a wonderful presentation from India. Thank you very much. Let's give her big hands.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Namaste. Now, ladies and gentlemen. Hello. Okay, thank you. Please, you can, yeah, okay. Ladies and gentlemen, now we have another presentation, third presentation. It is from Bangladesh, from India to, we'll go to Bangladesh, Dhaka.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vishnu Bandari, my good friend and chair of the session. Chair of the sessions. Now I'm going for Kiri.
Would you please increase your voice, please?
So thank you very much, Dr. Vishnu Bandari, chair of the sessions. I will try to finish within the stipulated time which has been allocated. Now I'm going to speak on, the title has already been said by our presenters, by the chair. So I am going to speak on the Haor Basin. You see, Haor Basin is Bangladesh, is a bowl-shaped area which is situated in the northwest part of the country. And why it is called the Haor Basin? This is a depression area. It is geographically, and it is all the Haor is also connected with the rivers, you know. And Bangladesh is also, I forget to mention that Bangladesh is also situated on the foothill of Himalayan, and all the and the Haor, most of the Haor during the dry seasons become full of water, but during the dry season, most of the upper part of the Haors become dry and it's converted into cropland. This is the Haor Basin now. Now, impact of COVID on the resources. You see, biodiversity, because of biodiversity due to no, yes, because of due to non-ability of humans, and biodiversity has been increased somehow. Nature get back, but it was very limited period of time, as because in our country's lockdown was only for 1 month, that is started from the 26th of March 2002 to 13th May. So during that period of time, nobody was in the harvesting, or there is no activities in the wetlands as a whole. That's why the wetlands become a resting times, and it's become somehow some biodiversity has increased, and community people's lives on the biodiversity due to mobility restriction, no less scope of harvesting. So no less scope of only harvesting, and that also marketing was also a problem, as because there is no communication, transportation from the rural area to the urban area, or market linkage was totally, stopped. As a result, nobody has going for the harvest of the resources. And then the study area, we have a study area. This is a Medir Haor, we call, which is situated on not very far from the Dhaka. It's about It's about 80 miles from Dhaka to Nasinnagar area. Nasinnagar is another sub districts of Brahmanbaria district, which is mentioned in the map. Now, on impact of fisheries, 40 species of fish are found in the Medirhaul. No significant change occur in the species number during the time, and 34 species of aquatic weeds has been identified. As a fish production increased immediate after the lockdown over for a week. As I said earlier that during at least 1 month, there was no fishing, nothing. As a result, the fish stock has increased. And so after lockdown, when the fishermen go to fishing, their catch was much higher than the previous. No fish production is half of regular capacity by common fisher in a day. It was 2.5 kg small fish, and big fish is rarely. Compared with the last year, catch was 5.5, and with a big fish occasionally in a open water fisheries. No impact of COVID in culture fisheries. Actually, you see, culture fisheries is also in a pond and other things in the area. And impact of economy of the fishers. So earning of the fisher goes down because it was a BD Taka 300, that means 3.5 US dollar per working day, whereas it was before it was 700 Taka, that is 8.5 US dollar last year. So average price of the fish has increased 2 times. Why? It is because the less cash, less supply, the price is increase in the market. Consumption by fish, middle income families has been reduced. Actually, because of the COVID and lockdown, the job in the work and income of the middle class people has really declined. As a result, the middle class people could not go for buying the fish and other essentials commodity as they before, because their income has reduced. 30 out of the 50 fisheries families has been from the local system called Dadon. Dadon means that it's a kind of some fisherman has taken the loan. Dadon call is loan. It is with a conventional credit systems in a rural area. We call it rural credit market, which is not the institutional, that is the conventional method of what it is called the credit. The loan money is used for actually the fishermen usually using the loan money for repairing their net, repairing their boat and other fishing equipment. As I mentioned that here net is not the nylon net, here it is net is for the cotton net. Usually cotton net usually not long lasting. That's why every year they have to prepare, or they have to make the new net for fishing. Pandemic along with the climate vulnerability. As you see, the climate is a very important factor for everywhere, not only in the wetlands. So as what we have seen that late rainy season sometimes, and erratic rainy seasons, and sometimes there is no water in the hour if there is a late rain. As a result, the breeding seasons of the fish is affected, and also you see the production has also affected if the breeding is not properly in the season as the breeding season. So cope with the community, as community suggested that diversifications of livelihood. Actually, diversifications of livelihood in the area has been taking place since long, as because the fish catch day by day is declining. The fisheries, from fisheries to fisheries, agriculture, and also crop cultivations, floating cultivations, aquaculture, fish fry release in open water. And you see, this way the fisherman is trying to cope with their for their livelihood. Now, coping with the new normal responsible wetlands actors, there are many wetlands actors, and that wetland immediately research and documentation is a very important for, and documentations of good practice and the community involved innovation. That is really needed for responsible with researcher, academician, and livelihood recovery project, advocacy with the government and international, agencies, biodiversity conservation action, advocacy for more protected area, capacity buildings of the, of the actors is also important for. And now human resource development is another important aspect for challenging the COVID-19. Identifications of intervention that has quickly recovered the result, documentations, address nutrition, identification, training, institutions and training. Training and institutions is very important for the capacity buildings of that, and it is also needed. NGO working for wetland, networking, academics, and the government, and also CBOs are also working really in the grassroots level. So now I'd like to say thank you very much with a fish trap, which is normally used in the wetlands in Bangladesh. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sanwar. Very good short presentation. Could you just explain what is this floating cultivation and how profitable it is from the not on the ground cultivation? Could you just summarize it or
is a floating cultivation
highlights on it?
Actually, floating cultivation is on the water. There is a bed made by water hyacinths and bed made by some bamboo and other thing. On the top of the bed there was a seedlings of some vegetables, and some vegetables has grown. That is we call in the floating cultivations. And floating cultivation is a traditional practice in the Haor area, and also it has popular. It has popular also even in the Assam side of the Assam lake area, and we traditionally that has been happening by the inhabitants of the wetlands.
Thank you, Sanwar. There is one question from Professor Rafi, Dr. Sanwar Hussain. Yes. What is the situation of swamp forest and biodiversity of the Medir Haor? What is the connectivity situation in and around the Haor? Are there any conservation activities practicing there?
Oh yes,
this is from AKM Rafiq.
Yes, actually, there are many activities, conservation activities there, and government has prepared the master plan also in Tangwar Haor and Hail Haor. So government and government department also taking care of that for conservations of the wetlands, particularly in the Haor area. Not only in Haor area, in some other area is also fisheries department also involved with that, and NGOs are very active in Bangladesh for conservation of wetlands.
There is a second question that from Rafiq. What is the connectivity situation in and around the Haor?
Connectivity situations means the connectivity situations of what? I don't really understand the question. The
connectivity situation in and around the Haor.
Oh, connectivity situations with the peoples. You see, connectivity situations of the peoples is good. No problems. Also, there is no problems with the connectivity, as because you see nowadays the communications, constructions of road, constructions of transportation during the rainy season. There are waterboat, and during the winter season road communication. So connectivity is somehow good, not that is previous one. Okay. There was very bad. Now it's improving the connectivity.
Fantastic. There is a third question from Rafiq. Are there any conservation activities practicing there in Haors?
Yes, there is a conservation activities is practicing there. We call it the Katha. It's a traditional method of conserving the brood fish and other in the Haor. We call in Katha system. That is traditionally by the fishermen in the area, and also the government is taking number of projects in Haor development, and also we have a Haor development board event. They are also having some project for conservation and management of the Haor.
Very good, very good. Very good, Sanwar Hussain bhai.
Thank
Good
you.
answer. Very short and sweet answer. Thank you very much. May I ask you one question from my side, since I could not go to the chat. This is a subjective study. It's wonderfully done. Do you also have some empirical information?
Which one? Hey, Mr. I
Some
don't know.
data to prove that, you know, ultra
Oh,
poor are getting ultra poor, you know?
actually, it's,
Yeah.
yes, there are some data, you know, there are some data on the hour, but at this moment I don't have. But there are project under this project, a lot of data has been collected by the government project, and if you really need that, I will able to collect the data from the government, and I can share with you.
Thank you very much. I don't see any questions from in the chat box, but there is a big thanks to you from Rafiq. Thank you, Rafiq, for asking the question to our presenter, Sanwar Hussain. Thank you very much, Sanwar Hussain. This was a very good qualitative study, and you have done in Howard, and in fact, you are the expert of the Howard system. Thank you so much. And also, you have some interview, you know, from the 60 fishermen. That was a very good answer, very good study. Let's give a big hands to Mr. Sanwar Hussain, even on online, big hands, okay? Thank you very much. Now, Sanwar, may I ask you to lead to conduct the remaining programs in the program, because you are the co-chair. So I will be listening to you. Thank you very much.
Actually, Vishnu-san, thank you very much for giving me the chance to co-chairing the session. In these sessions, I have a, what should I say? I have a two speaker. In fact, yes, two speaker. One speaker from Bangladesh, another speaker from Japan. You see, from Bangladesh, Mr. Taposh Ranjan Chakraborty, he is going to speak, and he has, you know, 15 minutes time. So, Mr. Taposh.
So my presentation is on the impact of COVID pandemic on the culture of wetlands in Bangladesh. This was the study was conducted by me and my co-researcher. So in Bangladesh, Bangladesh is a wetland country. It's actually 60% of this country's land is wetland of different forms. And we have 13 forms of wetlands in the country. And the socioeconomic aspects of Bangladesh is mostly dependent on the wetland. And almost all the cultures of this country, either those are wetland driven or wetland dependent. From our literature, art, film, our clothings, our games, tales, festivals, foods, norms, belief, even the religious practices, everything are dependent on the wetlands. So what happened? When the pandemic started, it's almost 2 years. The country is suffering from this COVID pandemic. And the country has first lockdown from this 23rd March. And now currently, this is a lockdown situation too. This is the second spell of lockdown running in the country. So during this lockdown, there was restriction on the gatherings and movement, and many festivals was not observed. And due to the COVID, the country has added 25 million new poor. This is in the country's economy. But what happened to the ecosystem and to the cultures? This was a study conducted in 3 Howards. One is very close to Dhaka. This is called Mehdi Howard. Another is Hakaluki Howard, and other one is Hail Howard. Among these 3 Howards, 2 Howards has some special conservation identity. The study was conducted from April to May, and we have interviewed 51 in an open-ended interview questions. So I'm sharing this. Okay. So we found that some festivals were not observed because of this COVID. which are the festivals which are associated with the cultural norms, I mean the nationalities, and others are associated with religion. The things at the Pohela Boishak on the first day of the Bengali New Year, this is bit really associated with religion and the culture too. But Basanta Utsav and annual boat race in that area was not associated with religion. This is completely related with the the norms of anthropogenic practices. And there are other festivals and programs associated with religion. One is the Fandak Mela, identified in the Medir Haur. Siddheshwari Mela, same is the Medir Haur. Chorak Puja is one festival of the last week of every Bengali year. This was observed in both three of these Haur areas. Beragor and Uaz is in where the Islamic scholar speaks. And the Posh Parban is a festival of winter. So those are disturbed because of this COVID pandemic. So how was, it was found that the level of mental shock of not observing was quite high in the first year. When the first Pahela Boishak, the New Year was not celebrated, people was actually shocked. But when it is in the second time it's happened, the shocking was not that much. Earlier, around 71% people was really shocking that we are not observing this festival because of this COVID. But in the last April, when only 42%, because it's said that around 30% people somehow has tolerated. So there's such a tolerance on culture, not observing these cultural norms is a high risk of conservation. And high risk of conservation action and losing the cultural norms and practices. And what happened? Then a new alternative cultural economy creates. So this is really one thing that we need to think of for the conservation of wetlands. So see that how it's affect the life and livelihood. This is one case from the Medir Haur, where most of the widows of fisher families, though they live with their brother's family, but for their food they have to earn themselves, and they earn by fishing. But what they earn by the 6 years working in a fish harvesting site, they only earn money and some fishes. And with those fishes, they actually exchange other everyday necessities. This is a keystone event for their life, for this fisher women, particularly the women-headed fisher households. So when there was no festival of this New Year festival, that means that around 300 individual women of this Medir Haur area, they can't even earn the household essentials, including the dry food for them. So this is a serious impact in the life of the fisher community, means the wetland dependent community. And there is a rough estimation by assessing the economic value. The Pohela Boishak values $29,450 in Nasirnagar. So this is the cultural value of a culture. Same, this Posh Mela in this Hail Haur, that worth 7,070 USD. That means if those festivals are not happening or we are losing this in some form, the economy will be interfered. So there is one analysis that how actually we lose the ecosystem, how actually the ecosystem value interferes when we lose a culture. So there is religious festivals that is called Marigulipita, which is associated with the goddess of snake. So what happened to this? So when it was lockdown and pandemic, it was not observed. So when it is not observed, the knowledge transfer between one generation to another generation on conservation is interfered. And necessary requirements, which is really associated with this such festivals and cultures are not required. So there is no demand of respecting those biodiversity, and there's no economy on this. So that resulted in the biodiversity loss. And when this biodiversity loss, those are associated with culture, so they create no production demand, and that there is no conservation attempt, and there is also a tolerance of ignorance. And somehow this culture replaced. So then what happened? The loss of practice resulted no conservation, and actually another result is habitat conversion. So this is a serious thing. So if the cultural values lost or declined, what will happen? There are 15 wetlands species which are actually conserved in those 3 Howard areas. I mean, 3 wetlands, not associated by religion, but by norms only. So like that, they are not killing birds with chicks. The brain fever bird is not killed. The snake-headed fishes, fries are not consumed. So if those cultural knowledge not transferred, ultimately those species will suffer. So what is the impact of pandemic in wetland biodiversity resources? This is the thing, is that lockdown resulted population increase because of less harvest, but a good number of people who were working in this urban areas in township, they actually migrate again to the wetlands, and they actually become dependent on this. And when that the no norms is practiced, then there is a risk of declining this fast. So along with this community in these interviews, what we have identified, the recommended action, there's demonstration on these cultural events on the televisions, because now people are watching TV too much. And then we can organize the online discussion on the values of wetlands, like of today, what we are doing. And there is another chance in situation researches using ICT, because what is happening currently on the vulnerabilities, we can ask people using this mobile phone or other technologies. So there's a good scope of having this research, because such pandemic is not happening every time. This is, so another, what we can do after this pandemic is over, that is wide number of gathering and discussion on the values of culture, projects and intervention to promote values and cultures, and documenting the cultural values, norms, and practices. That so when we were working on compiling the data, we found that one festival that is called Shumeshwari Mela in this Shumeshwari hour, which is not our research hour, we were informed that the festival was observed as of its regular. So why it happened? Then we have think, okay, if the development communities, if the wetland activists thinks to formulate projects, which type of projects needs to be formulated for the protection of the culture, ultimately protection of the wetlands. So the practices that are associated with religious norms need not to, they have no risks of extinction, but the practices and norms that are associated with the naturalistic value, with the nationalism, that is, they are under risks. What happened? Because of this online communication, the people now become a global citizen. They know many things about the outside, and there are less scope by the youth. This year, in the inaugural session, one young from Ramsar had speak. So there's such a pandemic also a risk for the youth to know about the culture. And other thing is that the norms, those are related with the sacred land, have medium risks. It's true. So if intervention taken on conservation of those norms, will it works? Yes. If we ask that how was your relationship when it is locked down, we found that the relationship never interfered, because this missing, because due to the lockdown, due to the pandemic, I mean, we are trapped in the houses, but we are not losing our friends because the missing is from both ways. Because my friend is missing me, I'm missing my friend. So when we meet, like today, what happened? I'm seeing your faces in my screen, and I found that okay, oh, I haven't missed you because same thing happened for you. You are missing me because of this pandemic. So if we take some action, so there is no risk of losing our culture, but the action definitely will be well analyzed and participatory planned and community led. So this is the recommendation that we got from the 3 hours that just after pandemic, we need to have some projects to conserve the culture, and that those projects should be well analyzed, participatory and community led. I'll end with the hope of our poet Rabindranath Tagore, who is the author of our national anthem. If you cry because the sun has gone, your life, your tears will prevent you from seeing the stars. So yeah, this is COVID, but there are definitely hopes from there. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I like to encourage questions from the floor. I don't see any question from the chat box. Please ask us question. Ask Tapas questions, you know. Well, I don't see, let me say, basically in wetland, when we say culture, it is a human action.
Yes.
It is a human action that is over the period of time becomes a culture.
Yeah.
So this COVID-19 has affected all kind of human actions because we are sitting in the room and trying to envision what is happening outside. So this is a very good study that Tapas has done it. At least he has been able to interview 51 people, and some of them he has also discussed with the online discussion and all these things. This is a very good thing. Yes, it has the COVID-19 has affected the cultural badly. I mean, cultural values of badly. But many places, even no religious worship, nothing, no cultural values, no cultural practices, no traditional, material or immaterial culture, tangible, intangible culture. So this is happening, and this is the serious issue that we have to consider. And of course, this will make these festivals and cultural, gathering. They are not only the source of, just for culture. It's a source of economic benefits also, economic values also. So it is a cultural thing. It's an economic value. It's a social value. It's a psychological value. All kind of this thing. I think Tapas has, summarized the whole thing from this hour thing, and this is a very good study. I think we should encourage. Congratulations, Mr. Chakrabarti. You did a good job. Yes, please.
Thank you.
Back to Sanwar, please. Sanwar, back to you.
Me?
Hey, Sanwar.
Tapos, if you have something, if you have something to say, please say.
Oh, no, there's thank you all, because I think the recommendations that we have from the community and with this analysis after the COVID, because COVID will not extend for many, because sometime there will be sunrise and there is no night that haven't the new morning. So we will have a good future and a normal situation. Then if we take some interventions very quickly to recovery, otherwise losing culture means losing identity. And in wetland, if we lose culture, we will lose our conservation sense. So my request to AWS to take actions that came from these 3 Haur, Medi Haur, Hail Haur, and Akaluke Haur. So from the people of that Haur, thank you all.
Thanks. Tapos, thank you very much for your concluding remarks. So if there is no other questions and comments, so Dr. Vishnu, shall we go for the another presentation?
Yes.
If there is no questions and comments, yes.
No, so let's go ahead.
So now our last presenter is Mr. Yoki Arai.
Okay, so thank you. I would like today, my name is Yuki Arai. I'm currently working at Shinshu University and also working with Ramsar Center Japan. And today I would like to share with you the results that we got from the survey we conducted in Thailand and Bangladesh together with my partners from Save Andaman Network in Thailand and Bangladesh POSH. The title is Impacts of COVID-19 Pandemic on Small-Scale Fishing Communities. So today I would like to talk about mainly about 2 points. The first point is about impacts of COVID-19 pandemic on small-scale fishing communities. And second point is the communities' adaptation strategies, how they are trying to adapt to this difficult situation. So the first about the objective of this study was to suggest how to strengthen resilience of coastal small-scale fishing communities under the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. And we had 2 study questions. Number 1 is what are the impacts of COVID-19 pandemic on natural, financial, and social capitals of small-scale fishing communities? Number 2 is how are the small-scale fishing communities trying to address the impacts caused by the pandemic? And basically, we conducted the questionnaire survey to a larger sample, larger population of the small-scale fishing communities, and also we continuously continued to interview about 40 people from both countries to get to know how they are trying to adapt to the situations. So the target countries are Thailand and Bangladesh, and all the data collection were conducted by Save Andaman Network in Thailand and Bangladesh POSH. And the duration was from August 2020 to June 2021. So the target site in Thailand was Tram province, which is located in the southwestern coast of Thailand, facing the Bay of Bengal. And ecosystem types are mangroves or seagrass beds. And when we focus on the small-scale fishermen, was 467 people, respondents. And in Bangladesh, the target areas were Moheshkari and Teknaf in Cox's Bazar district, and ecosystem types of mangroves and tidal flats. And of course, although they have collected data from about 200 people, we only focus on small-scale fishermen. It came to be 62. So we would like to show you some of the results we got from this survey. When we look at fishermen's average daily fish catch in both countries, the light blue color shows the daily fish catch before the COVID-19 pandemic, and the dark blue color shows the fish catch after being affected by COVID-19, which is right after the lockdown. And we observed a sharp decline of fish catch in both countries. Now this figure shows the average monthly income in US dollars in both countries. Again, this light blue color shows before COVID-19, and the dark blue color shows after COVID-19. And here, following the average fish catch, the monthly income has also showed a sharp decline. But here, when we look at the monthly expenditure, we only observed a slight decrease in both countries. And when we look at the reasons why this why this happened, when we, according to the questionnaire survey results about the fish catch, most frequently answered reasons were less market demand, government regulations, and fear toward virus infection. Many people, even though after the lockdown, there seems to be more fish stocks. So they could catch a lot of fish, but they couldn't sell them because the international market was stagnating. And they used to export a lot of fish or crabs or shrimps to other countries like China, but a lot of those markets were down. So they couldn't sell them to the middle person, even if they catch them. And this is also influencing the income because there are less market demand. Of course, a market price was also going down, and so they had much less income. And but however, as for the expenditure, a lot of people answered that the cost for commodity price increased because the supply chain also was heavily influenced, and because they had much less income, but they have to sustain their families' livings. So many of them had to obtain a loan, borrow money from informal money lenders or some relatives or somebody, often with high interest rates, to sustain their livings. And from these facts, we might be able to say that wetland ecosystem services cannot always function enough when global market economy is in crisis. Because of course, wetland ecosystem services are very important in providing those fish or crabs. But because we found that even these small scale fishermen are also very deeply embedded in the global market economy. Even the small scale fishermen cannot receive those wetland ecosystem services under this global market economic crisis. Now, I would like to look a little bit about look at the social relationship, impacts on the social relationship in both countries. We used the Likert scale from 4 to 1. Number 4 represents a very strong social relationships, and 1 represents a very weak social relationship. In Thailand, if we look at social relationship with among their families, relatives, and community members, most people's social relationship, they perceive that their social relationship has been weakened after the lockdown. And if we look at the situation in Bangladesh, it was even worse. They had a severe impact on social relationship. A lot of people answered that their social relationships was even weaker after being affected by the COVID-19. And why did this happen? As Mr. Tapas also mentioned in the presentation before, a lot of the social events like village meetings or festivals or the wedding ceremonies, those were canceled or postponed. So of course, people couldn't have an opportunity to get together. Because of the government regulations or fear toward virus infection. But there are also one of the reasons very frequently mentioned was a decrease of income, especially in Thailand. Many people answered that because they didn't have enough money to live their lives, their family relationship had some difficulties. And also a lot of people felt embarrassed to meet with other people because their income is largely decreased and they didn't feel like meeting with other people. So that kind of situation was observed from these survey results. Now, then I would like to talk about the adaptation strategies, how these small-scale fishermen were trying to address these difficult situations. In Thailand, it was interesting that a lot of people mentioned that they increased their reliance on seafood to reduce expenditures. Because of course, if they buy beef or chicken in the market, it costs a lot. It's very expensive, especially under COVID-19. But so if you, a lot of people started to catch fish, shrimp or crab or shellfish in mangroves or tidal flats, and they just consume them by themselves for self-consumption. And that way they could save a lot of money for their expenditure. So many people like ate seafood like 2 times or 3 times a day. And another interesting point was that in Thailand, especially in Thailand, many people who used to work for tourism industries, like in hotels or restaurants, they lost their jobs because there were much less tourists in this area. But then those people started fisheries because probably because it was relatively easier for them to go back to their home because it's a fishing community. A lot of their parents or relatives actually still work as fishermen, so it was easier to start working as a fisherman in their home. So from these facts, we can say that wetland ecosystems can serve as a safety net. But on the other hand, there's also a risk of overexploitation in case too many people rely on natural resources. Actually, in some areas, a certain number of people answered that right after the lockdown, the fish stock increased. But after a while, after like 6 months, the fish stock or crab stocks decreased. So we don't know the scientific data yet, whether the population actually increased or decreased. But this is just a perception of the fishermen, but there might be some risks of overexploitation that have been occurring. Now, about in terms of financial capital, fishermen were searching for because the international markets were stagnating. Local fishermen searched for local or domestic markets. Many people answered that they try to sell their fish products to their local restaurants or local shops. And in Thailand, actually, some people learned how to sell those fish products online and sell them in a domestic market by online and by collaborating with private delivery services. Because international markets were down, they had to survive through selling things locally. And also, it was interesting that many people actually sold their fish to their community members, neighbors, or colleagues, because there were no other markets. So we might be able to say that local small-scale markets or domestic online markets may play an important role under this kind of economic crisis. So even if the income was decreasing, at least people try to somehow survive by using accessing the local or domestic markets. And finally, about social capital, people were, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of people felt that their social relationship was getting weaker right after the lockdown. But they still try to maintain their social relationship by helping each other, by sharing food, and some people in Thailand try to support other villagers by providing technical support for online marketing. And some people lend their money also. So even some people mentioned that their social relationships once become weaker, but after a while it was getting even stronger than before the COVID-19, because they were helping each other to get over this situation. And also, as I mentioned earlier, people sold their fisheries products to neighbors, colleagues, or local community members. So we can say that social capital may also serve as a safety net and support vulnerable people under this kind of crisis. So finally, I will, based on these findings, I would like to make a few recommendations for enhancing resilience. First of all, of course, conservation, restoring coastal wetland ecosystem is very important, because it was definitely, we observed that a lot of these mangroves, tidal flats were serving as a very important source of food for their survival, and some people change their jobs to become fishermen. So it is very important to do that. But at the same time, on the other hand, we also need to provide training for alternative income sources other than fisheries, because if too many people rely on fisheries, it might cause overexploitation. And of course, if the fish price or crab price or shrimp price, they can fluctuate very easily by the global market change. So it will be better to support people to obtain jobs or skills with local market or local demands, so that people can at least survive by selling things locally. For example, in Bangladesh, a lot of people were trying to harvest and sell betel leaf in their local area. And also in Thailand, some people were trying to produce value-added products like a crab sauce and sell them online. So that kind of, those demands actually exist within the local area, or at least in the domestic markets. So that kind of skills or jobs will be very important. Okay, thank you very much. And I would like to thank again all the my colleagues from Bangladesh Post and the Save Andaman Network for conducting such a great survey under this difficult situation. And thank you very much for the audience for your kind attention. Thank you very much.
Sanwar, back to you.
That because I have seen his, you know, some study from Bangladesh part. So I don't have anything to say, but I wanted to say just one thing, is that you just mentioned very clearly that the support to job and access to market, and supposed to job and access to market by whom, that is very important, because as you uh, as you know that who is going to support them, that is a very big question. As you mentioned very clearly that support is needed for the fishermen, for their capacity building, for their assisting to market, assisted to job when they become jobless during these lockdown times and other. Who is going to do that? That is a very basic thing. I mean, who is going to do that? If you can just got some answer from your study, that would be very, very good.
Yeah, I just it's not a focus of this particular study, but I just think that of course this needless to say, the NGOs will have a very important role in supporting this kind of vulnerable fishing communities. So I hope we can collaborate with our partners in not only Bangladesh, Thailand, but also in other countries to work together. Based on these results, we should we should think about how we can further support these fishing communities to make to enhance their resilience. So of course, I think NGOs are very important.
Yes, yes,
Partners who would be able to support them.
Okay.
yes.
Is that
you.
answering your question?
Yes, you're right that NGOs and government also can support them. Government also can support them. Someone from, I think Myanmar friend has also mentioned very good way that the government can also support. That's very good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sanwar-san. This is a very good paper. It covers 2 countries and there are 400 fishing communities. And there are many people. Yuki Arai-san is the main lead author. Simpe Iwasaki, Sanwar Hussain, Asad Miha, Tapan Ghosal, Tapan Rajan, Maniwan Sanli, Misato Uhera, all are the co-authors. So this is a very good paper, Yuki-san. There are some few questions from the audience. This is from Satoshi Kobayashi Sensei. The market demand on fish decreased and it reduced the fish catch. On the other hand, people increased their reliance on seafood. Does this mean that fish were consumed outside the market, or seafoods means marine resources other than fish? Yuki-san?
If I understand his question correctly, I believe this. They were consuming
Yes.
the fish outside of the market, meaning
Exactly, right.
there was a self-consumption. They just caught by themselves and just ate by themselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Second part of the same question is, or seafood means a marine resource other than fish, or what is the seafood when you say seafood?
Sorry. Yeah, this is sorry, seafood refers to fish, various fish and crab, shrimp and shellfish mostly.
Very good.
Yeah, some people also answer squid. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you. Very, very short and sweet answers. Thank you. There is a question from Uthura So. Thank you, Yuki-san, for your fruitful presentation. How about the support of government and NGOs to community to resilient on pandemic, and what effects to those community in both countries? Are there any support from the government sides and NGO? What kind of effects it has made? That's the whole thing.
Okay, I might have only a limited information, but I heard that, for example, in Thailand, the government had some kind of a subsidy, or they provided some financial assistance especially for poor or vulnerable people to survive their lives. And also maybe they collaborated with some NGOs to deliver some instant food, instant noodles or something to especially for the vulnerable poor people in order to survive. And
Good.
I'm not exactly sure in Bangladesh. Maybe Dr. Sanwa may know.
Anyway,
Actually, Vishnu-san, I just tell very frankly that health support from the government and also some relief support from the government during this lockdown period, during this jobless time in the whole countrywide in Bangladesh. Government provided health support and some relief support. Those who are middle class, poor class, landless, peoples in the country. That has provided by the government.
Okay, thank you, Sanwar. Yuki-san, there is another question from Professor Mr. Lu. If the government give economic support, does the fishery activities will decrease, or does it benefit to the wetland ecosystem? Can you catch it?
Yes, just a moment. If the government give economic support, does the
Yeah.
fishing activities decrease?
Is does the government support increase the fishing, fishery activities? That's what he says.
Economic support
Yes.
is like
Financial support.
financial support. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for the good question, but I'm not exactly sure what will happen if the government gives economic support. But maybe. Yeah. I think. Yeah. Economic support. If the economic support is aiming at providing some alternative income source other than fisheries, and if the people can sustain their living without catching fish, then of course the impacts on the wetland ecosystem will be reduced. So it may benefit the ecosystem as a whole.
Okay.
But
Thank
I'm
you.
not exactly sure.
Okay, thank you, Yuki-san. Good question, good answer. There is a question from the RRC East Asia program. Would be interesting to learn about the follow-up study. That is to say, determine if the wetlands were indeed overexploited, especially if the community was not able to find an alternative source of income.
Yeah, that's an important point. Yeah, that will be, thank you very much for the comment. I would like to look for this opportunity. Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, there is another question from Guru Besar Aprianto from Indonesia. Enhancing resilience for people which they on their life to which they rely on their life to nature. How do deliver this message in order to help them to counter COVID-19?
How to deliver?
Yes, this message, dependence on nature.
Yeah, how to deliver this message? Yeah, if I understand this question correctly, yeah, enhancing resilience is I think we cannot I think it's better to take a bottom-up approach.
Yes,
we can't just like we Japanese or some NGO suddenly go to the villages and we can't tell them to do this or to that. We need in order to build a real resilience that really fits in the local community. I think we have to have some kind of process, communication, a discussion process together with the community. So the community can make a decision by themselves. We might be able to, the NGOs might be able to provide some options of alternative income source or some ecologically sustainable livelihood options. And maybe the community themselves can choose one of them. And that way, I think the communities can actually introduce whatever technique that really fits to their needs, to the natural environment, and their ownership will be increasing. So I'm not sure if that's answering this question, but
I think you were able to catch the gist of the question. Is that how to deliver those messages? There are varieties of ways, and one of them is like a community discussion and making them aware, public awareness strategy, formal education, and even public education. So this sort of thing, I think Guru Besar Aprianto wanted to know it. Thank you, Guru Besar. I
Thank
think
you.
I don't have any questions in the chat box. So I like to thank Yuki-san and his team for a good presentation and getting a data from 400 communities from Bangladesh and Thailand. It was a great study. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we are going to wrap up. I think this was a very, very learning experiences for both of us, Sanor Hussain and myself. There was many good papers based on the facts and figure. So we would like to thank all the authors, speakers, and of course, it was a very participant and all the people, all those people who asked the question, try to stimulate the discussion. Our millions of thanks to all those people. Thank you very much.